I hope you all had a nice coffee and you are now looking forward to follow up our discussions with the next topic of our plenary session, which is very much focused on what are our achievements up to now. I think it was said at the opening session that a lot has been done. There are questions, EOSC exists, EOSC does not exist. There are questions how we pull the national activities together with European Open Science Cloud, questions about inclusiveness and avoiding silos, questions of what is expected to be achieved by 2025, and even further questions, and concretely that it means. And what it means, not for the policymakers, because a lot of those here, but for the actual actors, the stakeholders, the researchers, the research organizations, which are also here, many of those. As we said in the opening session, a big change in the mindset and in our collaboration has been the establishment of this European Open Science Cloud tripartite collaboration. And just to be very clear what we mean by that, because probably it's a bit confusing. You heard about the partnership, you know about the association, you know about a steering, or you heard about the steering board chaired by the Commission and the Member States. So a partnership, a co-program partnership in the context of Horizon Europe program is, in other words, a way to join forces between stakeholders and also mandated organizations from member states that they are committed to work together with the European Commission and to provide funding together with the European Commission on delivering a concrete objective. So what we want to deliver is the European Open Science Cloud on a basis of a strategy that have been agreed by the two partners and on the basis of funding provided through projects of Horizon Europe, based on projects and results of Horizon 2020, but also matching funding provided by the other half of the partner, which is the association. This is a typical Horizon Europe co-program partnership. What is the added value and what is actually the difference that we have in this EOSC is the strong involvement of the member states. The member states, together with the Commission, together with the associated countries that they have signed already the association agreement with Horizon Europe, they are participating on the steering board. And what this steering board does, they are steering strategically and politically the implementation of EOSC. And also because the member states, they have a strong interest on EOSC and they want to be also part of the association, they have mandated their own organizations to be part of the association. So it's a bit complex, but the added value of this is that we try to avoid the silos and we try to work all together and not just to sitting in our political offices in Brussels or in the member states and thinking about EOSC alone, but to work together with the communities through the association to tell us exactly what are the expectations. So it's a real partnership. And today, in this session, we are going to have a presentation, I would say, 20, 25 minutes maximum from the three parties of this collaboration. And then, hopefully, a very animated session, question and answer sessions with participants in the room, but also with those that they have joined us virtually. And they have also the possibility to use this Slido. So, I would like to ask and to invite in the fantastic panel and the nice chairs that they are very comfortable with me, Michael Arenhoff, Head of Unit in DG Research and Innovation, responsible for open science policy, which includes, of course, EOSC. Probably even terrible with the names, and I want not to make any mistake. Volker Beckmann from the French Ministry for Science, Higher Education, Research. Voilà. And apart from representing France here, Volker is not here as France. He's here as a co-chair of the EOSC steering board. And I have the pleasure to chair together the steering board because he's really so committed and so effective that the achievements that you will see today is also very much thanks to Volker. And last but not least, from the association side, we have Karel Luyben, the president of the association. Karel, you have been working with us from the beginning, more or less, of the EOSC, if I'm not mistaken. Huh? You have been working with us since the beginning of the EOSC, more or less. And then, where is the Ute? Ute, I don't see your name, Ute. How it is? Is it difficult, huh?
But
so present yourself, Ute, please. Thank you. So, but also from EOSC Association, and you are the vice chair. Or
I'm the Secretary General.
Secretary General. So, you know, with these associations, I'm always a bit, I'm not so sure who is the highest at the end. Is the President or the Secretary General? So you have to guess today who is highest in the ranking. So, I suggest that we start. We have already some time. But again, I would like to ask you to make sure that you are not too long in your presentation, because it will be boring and nobody will follow. So it is important that we have the possibility to exchange views and to discuss all together the future of EOSC. Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna. I think the first thing to say is that Anna introduced this whole thing about the three parties, and indeed this is what this session is about. What are the achievements from each of the three parties? But hopefully we will also show that we have a real collaboration between the three parties. Commission, association, member states. But first of all, let's not forget that at the end of the day, it's about the researchers, it's about the research organizations who will do the developments with other stakeholders, and at the end are the targets, which was one of the questions from the first session. So, I will approach this intervention in terms of the achievements we have policy-wise, the achievements we have program-wise, and the same thing for the plans for 23. What do I mean when I say policy-wise? So we have a policy which is about promoting different practices of undertaking research in terms of open access, in terms of data sharing, but it goes also to verifiability and reproducibility of results and other open science practices. Part of the policy is also to support a set of key enablers, so the underlying conditions for this policy. And here, of course, EOSC is among the prominent ones, having a minimal viable EOSC together with a network of repositories. But closely connected are also other enablers, like our initiative on reforming research assessment, which is very important to give the right incentives and the right rewards for data access and data sharing. It's also an enabler on skills. So how do we get the right amount of data stewards in place? Do we have the right toolkits in place? How do we link to educational policy? And I would also add to this the legal environment, and in particular, of course, data legislation, but also copyright legislation or digital legislation in general, to ensure researchers under which conditions they can do, for instance, text and data mining on publications and data, if their data repositories fall under the Digital Services Act, and other legal issues that are key enablers and then link also into the activities under EOSC. So, in terms of policy achievements, since we met the last time, the last symposium was middle of last year, there was a very important milestone in November last year, where the so-called ERA Pact, or the Pact for Doing Research in Europe, was adopted by the Council. And for those of you who have seen it, you see that open science is very prominent in this pact. It talks about free circulation of knowledge, of data and tools. It talks about excellence. There's a form of a definition of excellence. And of course, the most important thing about excellence is that the research is world-class. But it goes beyond that, and it says that also the research outputs need to be verifiable or reproducible. And it talks about the research process being transparent to the extent that it allows systematic reuse of research outputs. So you see that the definition of excellence has a double meaning here. It's the research itself has to be world-class, but also the process has to be an open science process. And you see that open science is defined as a joint priority area for action between Commission, member states, and stakeholders. The second policy achievement I would like to mention is, as Anna summarized in the previous session, there's a history of how open science was accelerated through different policy initiatives. Starting in 2015, 2016 was the Amsterdam Call, the EOSC Council conclusions in 2018, and we have kept up the momentum. So in addition to the pact, there was also on the same day in November last year, the adoption of the policy agenda. And action number 1 is all about open science and the further development of EOSC. And we kept this momentum also in June this year with another set of council conclusions around open science, which was also referred to in the previous session. So, EOSC on the top of the ERA policy agenda. What does it mean in concrete terms? And you can see the motivations is about open science as the new normal. It's about access and sharing. And it's about also knowing about the trends. How are we progressing towards the objectives of EOSC? And these motivations are very much reflected also in the outcomes that we expect from this action under the ERA policy agenda. So first and foremost, and this is the middle one you see here, it's about developing the EOSC core, it's about developing the EOSC exchange, and it's about having this fair data federation. And of course, linked to that, the network of repositories. It's also about identifying the good practices, and together with that, also, of course, having different competence centers, having different data curators, having different toolkits for making data fair in place as part of this action. And it's about monitoring, so to have a joint monitoring mechanism put in place, supplemented also by cross-cutting studies, and I will have a slide later about a study we have done on the European research data landscape that shows some very interesting results for further, that shows that indeed further work is needed. And as I said, it's about showing these good practices. And this leads me to answer the challenge that Anna put from the first session, which was about what could we show in 2025. So this was an ad hoc challenge. So this is also a bit my personal take on this question, where I believe, yes, there is indeed a need to prototype and to demonstrate the use of such a minimal viable EOSC in different advanced communities, be it, for instance, Earth observation, environmental science, be it life sciences, so health, or be it physics or photonics. So to have some of these advanced communities demonstrating not only that it works for them, but also to demonstrate what is the added value of having a DMP, a data management plan. Why is it really for your own benefit that you're doing it, and not just because it's a contractual obligation? What is the added value for you to work early on having a data set which is fair? So to demonstrate to other communities, either within the same disciplines or other disciplines, or indeed multidisciplinary, that with this configuration of EOSC, this demonstrated prototype, I can make my data set fair by design. I can more easily integrate data sets of different types. I can more easily compose different research services so that the workflow becomes more smooth. When I deposit my data, I do it with legal certainty. So if you have a demonstration of all these services and functionalities of EOSC, I think that is something that will make a good impression, not only for the next phase of EOSC, so politically and program-wise, but first and foremost for the researchers and for the research organizations. So this is our policy achievement in terms of linking into the policy agenda and in fact being at the top of the ERA policy agenda. The other hook that we have, very important, is the hook that we have in the European strategy for data as the transverse data space that is to be well articulated with the sectoral data spaces. And here, of course, our role goes both ways. Us as EOSC community contributing to the European strategy for data is very much about reusing the experience, the great experience we have working on an interoperability framework, working on fairness of data. But also the other way, of course, we need to link into the Data Spaces Support Center, which is part of this strategy. We need to link into the development of the middleware that will bind these data spaces together. And we need also closer connections, as I said in our previous slide, to the legal environment. This is very important also for the Data Governance Act. It's very important for the Data Act. It's very important also for communications on high-value data sets. So both the legal aspects and the policy aspects of the digital agenda is very important to be part of. This is a bit of an operational slide, which is supposed to demonstrate indeed the collaboration that we have both with the member states in the steering board. You see there is an intense set of activities there. And also to demonstrate that it's a real partnership. We work in real partnership with the EOSC Association to update the SRIA, to have the multi-annual roadmaps also reflecting the needs and the wishes of the stakeholders, and then for us on the Commission side to translate that in the best possible way into priorities for calls under the Horizon Europe work program. Same thing with the monitoring. We are working together also on monitoring the performance of the partnership as such. So not only talking about the Commission's role in terms of monitoring and reviewing the projects that we are launching as a result of the work program, but indeed also the overall monitoring to the matching contributions from the association and its members. And then also we see the Commission role in this partnership to be in the position to link across Horizon Europe, be it to the clusters, the missions, the other partnerships. EOSC is so far the only horizontal partnership, and horizontal means that it adds value to the more vertical ones. But also link into the sectoral data spaces of the European strategy for data and thinking about what comes next, what comes after Horizon Europe in terms of the partnership. In terms of monitoring, as I spoke about in the last slide, here we have been focused so far on the national level. So what is the readiness for taking up and connecting to EOSC at the national level? What are the policies in place at national level, the financial contributions as well, and linked to that also the complementarity with the monitoring that we need at the partnership level, so the key performance indicators and the additional activities that are done in the context of the partnership by the members of the association. I promised you that I would give you a snapshot of the complementary study that we have done in terms of viewing where we are in terms of progress. It's quite impressive. It builds on the responses from more than 15,000 researchers. It builds on an analysis of more than 300 research data repositories. The study has undertaken what we call a fairness assessment of 31 data repositories, so more than 7,000 data sets. And it has gone through a number of case studies also to dig deeper into what is today's landscape of research data and what are the practices that we see in the researchers and the research organizations. And the results are, I would say, still showing that we have a lot of work to do. It shows that 60% of researchers still store their data in personal or local institutional data repositories, and only, less than 40% use trusted shared data repositories. 1/3 have never heard about the FAIR principles, very surprisingly. And if you look into the different components of making data fair, you see that, DMPs, there is quite some uptake there, but if you look at the other things you need to do to make data fair, the PIDs, the metadata, the open licenses, depending on which of these parameters you look at, you get below 20%. So I think you could claim that less than 20% really are making their data fair. And then we ask, why is that? What are your main barriers? And three main ones come up. It takes too much time, it takes too much effort, it's too costly. So the transition phases, the upfront investment is very high. Secondly, there is legal uncertainty. What do I need to do? Are there data protection issues that I need to care about? And thirdly, there's a lack of recognition for sharing my data. There's a lack of rewards, incentives to make my data fair. Coincidentally, this corresponds to ERA policy actions 1, 2, and 3. We are working on the infrastructures to make it easier to practice open science. We are working on the EU copyright data and digital legislation to make it more fit for research and researchers. And we are working on reforming research assessment so that we get the right incentives in place for practicing open science, but also more generally for rewarding the kind of things we value in research, and that leads to higher quality and impact of the research. I would like to highlight the platform that was already mentioned in the first session, the COVID-19 data platform that was launched in April 2020, to show you that it's indeed very much extended, and both in terms of the data sets that it supports, but also in terms of the different features and services that it supports. There are several projects that also build on it. By COVID is mentioned here. Secondly, mentioning also that in the context of the European Strategy for Data, and in particular the first one, the European health data space, there is a pilot case that is building on the work we have done in this domain, which is about colorectal cancer data, and is run by Elixir and the federated EGA in this context. So we have a hook there also into demonstrated the added value in the context of the different data spaces. And finally, also a hook into the other parts of Horizon Europe, and here mentioning the hook into the cancer mission through the EOSC for Cancer project. So these are at the same time policy achievements, but also now starting to go into the program achievements, because of course EOSC for Cancer is financed by our program. The last thing I want to mention still on the policy side is the very important link to the ESFRI, thematic research infrastructures and the clusters that we see here. And so you know these are in the areas of environment, health, SSH, physics and photonics. So a very important both for the seeing these both as the users of EOSC and as producers of data and services into EOSC. And the other important connection with EOSC is the connection to e-infrastructures, be they in the areas of networking, computing, middleware, or indeed grids or data. So here again, we have a collaboration, and we are providing inputs also to their reflection papers, that the white paper that is coming out very soon. Now, turning to the program, we have seen, so you have seen that overall for Horizon Europe, we have committed 500 million in the period from 21 to 27. So the 136 represents the first 2 years. And in the first 2 years, we have seen, since the last symposium, the launch of 10 projects that range all the way from working on skills, working on interoperability, the cancer project I already mentioned, but also support directly to the activities of the partnership. And of course, the deployment of the core components for this web of fair data and services. And then you see a number of projects that are disciplinary, that go into services, for instance, AI services for research, but also disciplines. The first one, for instance, is in the area of Earth observation and environmental, the environmental field. I didn't put on the slide the 2022 projects because they're still in grant preparation phase, but they will support EOSC for the Oceans mission. So in addition to the cancer mission, we also go to the Oceans mission. It will support global alignment, so talking to our international partners on their initiatives aligned with the EOSC developments. And also a project that will support the reform of research assessment in terms of providing data to research assessment. And the fourth project that we will be launching very soon is related to the technical infrastructure for open access publishing. And then we're almost ready with the adoption of the work program for 23 and 24. So another 130 million will go into this. And here we have more than 10 topics that we are supporting. Some of you might have already seen the draft that was pre-published a few days ago. So you see big investments in again, the uptake by different research infrastructures, by different research communities. You see big investments in services for the EOSC core and in services for the EOSC exchange. So we expect that this will open early December. Closing date, 9th of March, very important to have in mind, 9th of March. And the second call then comes in December 23, again with a deadline then in March 24. I talked already about the importance of interacting with other clusters, with the clusters and the missions in Horizon Europe and with other partnerships. I should mention also that open science, research data management, data sharing is part of the operations of Horizon Europe. We should not forget that indeed it's part of the evaluation criteria, how you practice open science, and indeed research data management is a part of these practices. And we are also injecting different activities into the topics under the clusters. So you will have seen that in 21 and 22, if you look not only at the EOSC destination, but also look at the different destinations in the clusters, there are a lot of incentives to include in projects EOSC relevant work. And finally, and not least, I will say it's very important that we also link to the deployment programs. Traditionally, we have been linking closely to the structural funds, so the ERDF programs. Here, I will add also that more and more we should have links into projects related to the digital agenda. So the Digital Europe program, the Connecting Europe facility, important to have synergies with these as well. And as was mentioned by Georgios, very important also to have a hook to be in the scope of the RRF, to the recovery and resilience facilities, because there are very important means there available to do the investments at the local level. Now, moving into the plans, how is the outlook that we have a bit in general terms? First, in terms of policy. So the ERA policy agenda is for 22 to 24, which means that we are right in the middle of the implementation phase. And as I said, we have very important deliverables on the 3 outcomes for ERA Action 4. We are working closely with DG Connect on the relation to the data spaces under the European Strategy for Data, pushing for us to share this EOSC and FAIR experience. As I said, we're already thinking ahead to see what will happen after 27 in terms of the desired governance, the desired funding, the desired type of partnership in FP10, in what follows Horizon Europe. And we, of course, continue also on working on policy issues in terms of the overall updates of the SRIA and what kind of additional activity plans are needed from the partnership point of view. And last, I should not forget that we are also in a unique position from the European Commission side to have seats on various international fora where we are promoting, again, the features of EOSC and the different practices that we promote. We are in different groups of the RDA, including, for instance, the GORC, the Global Open Research Commons. We are also participating in the context of CODATA and the GOSC, the Global Open Science Cloud. UNESCO has a working group on open. UNESCO have different working groups to follow up on their recommendation for open science of last year, and we are participating in all of these, including the one on infrastructure. And there is the G7 Open Science Working Group that has a subgroup, again, on research infrastructures where we work, of course, with the G7 countries, the Americans, the Japanese, and several European countries. And my final slide, then the plans program-wise, if you like. So I already mentioned the topics that will be covered in the call in 22. So we will be rolling out these new projects, hopefully before the end of the year. We will launch the first call on the work program 23-24 with a deadline 9th of March. DG Connect, again, of course, with us being involved, will start the procurement action, again, hopefully before the end of the year. So, we'll launch the call for the procurement action, and then the work will start at the end of next year. The real start until, so from end of 23 to end of 26. The interaction with the association continues, as I said, to work on the future versions of the SRIA and then how we reflect that not only into the work program, because we will have another strategic planning from 25 to 27. The mainstreaming, again, we take on us as a responsibility to interact with our colleagues to make sure that we inject as much as possible of activities that are relevant to EOSC, which of course is very important for the uptake and the use. And as I said, linking with deployment programs that go beyond synergies with structural funds, but also to deployments in terms of the digital agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I suggest that you stay for one moment there. And for this presentation, I believe it's clear to everybody that from the Commission side, we put all the efforts, financial and resources, real people that they are in this room and they are also in the screen and they're working from Brussels, from both DGs, DG Research and Innovation and DG Connect, who is responsible for all the digital aspects, because we do see the need to bring forces together on this. Michael, a lot of effort has been done. I think with your, the results of the survey, you also demonstrated, or you replied partially to the question that we have about the difficulties that the researchers have and the challenges that they have to join EOSC mentality and to convert towards EOSC. And one of it was about information or communication. It was also about a reward, because they don't feel that they are going to be rewarded about that. It was also about a lack of guarantees that the knowledge that they have developed is not going to be stolen, I can imagine as well. And there was one question about, and I think it's still there, what will happen, and there are questions there in the screen, probably they're a little bit linked to your presentation, about legal requirements on data, whether we're talking about medical data, but also it's very much linked to the guarantees. Okay, we're talking about data sovereignty, data spaces. We have the logo, I think it's our logo, as open as closed as necessary. So as open as possible, as closed as necessary. Can you briefly reply to those with the knowledge that you have up to now? And I will invite anybody else who would like to ask questions to Michael before we move to the next presentation.
Yes, so indeed, the EOSC for Cancer is providing the technical infrastructure and also the link into making data fair. So this, to some extent, is linked to the legal requirements, and they, of course, will work together with the different medical communities, the clinical trial communities, to see how they, from a technical point of view, can contribute. And sometimes, yes, they are linked to the legal requirements in terms of how to handle sensitive data. And also, by the way, it's linked also to the European health data space and the regulation that clearly distinguishes between primary use and secondary use. And of course, research follows under the secondary use. And we have our hooks there in terms of how EOSC will be used. But at the end of the day, EOSC for Cancer is on a project level, and they are really providing then the technical support to the people in health research.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience in the room or? Yes, please.
Well, it's not exactly a question, it's mainly a comment. I'm Pierre from Pierre Lucidaner from Observatory of Paris. It's astronomy community. You talk about the use of researcher of principle and sharing the data. I would say that in our community, people are using the local data center and manage one of it just because they trust in it. I mean, we are there 60, 67. The institute is working, so what people push the data in local data center. If they go to EOSC, their problem is how many times this data would be available. What is the financial support for long-term preservation in EOSC? And that's pushing to the community, French one, national one, and so on. And because we have some money at the beginning of project to buy storage, to participate to financial support, but 10 years after, there is no money in the project. Mm-hmm. And we want to be sure that fair principle means accessible, so it costs to keep data for more than 10 years in a project. So I'm pushing all the financial support to go for further and longer period in investing in EOSC and to engage with themselves in that, nationally and also the Commission.
Yeah, indeed, trusted repositories, long-term preservation of data are key issues. I see that Volker has taken the microphone.
So first of all, keep your trusted repository, which you have at the Observatoire, because that's exactly what we want, right? We don't want to reproduce something. We don't want to do something replacing working repositories, but we want to make them more visible, more usable. I know that the astrophysics community is already very good in fairization of data and sharing data and so on. Then for the question of the long-term support, the support for sharing data, for sharing resources, sharing services and infrastructures, that's a key interest of, I would say, all European countries. Because we have to we want to make the best out of our investment. So that's kind of the guarantee for the EOS type services to be persistent and to be hanging around. Because even if it would have a different title, we as ministries, we want that you get the most out of the research data. So they have to be fair. Otherwise, it's kind of useless. In France, you have this even written in the law. So we don't push too much that it's in the law, but of course we support this fully, and the other countries as well. So I think this question, is this still going to be there in 5 years? The answer is yes, yes, and yes. How it's governed, how we coordinate between the different partners, that's a different question, but the principle is going to be there. So if you invest now, you don't have to invest later, and you are one of the first providers then. So I think the answer is go for it.
Thank you very much. So I think time is ticking, and I would suggest that with this, of course, there will be a possibility for more questions from the audience here or from the Slido. But I would like then to pass the floor to Volker to share with us, with all of you, the developments in the context of the EOSC steering board.
Yes, and I try to keep to your 15 minutes you gave us. Let's see.
Not a tough.
So EOS steering board. So first of all, who are we? Right, so we are the representatives of the member states and the associated countries, together with DG RTD and the DG Connect from the Commission. So we represent 27 member states and 16 associated countries by now, so 43 representatives of ministries, and this is a successor of the EOS governance board, if you have been long enough around for knowing this. So we started with the steering board in March last year, and since this year, this is co-chaired between the European Commission, between Anna and the member state representative. So what do we do? So, not to make you fall asleep, because policies, of course, you might think, oh, that's something I really don't care about. But it's very important. Policies are the frame for your work as research organization and even as researcher. So if it's not in the policy, you might not get the support from your ministries, from your funding agencies to do something. So make sure that what you want to do as a research organization is implemented in policies. And this is what we do on national levels. We try to find the right guidelines for you to do your research. So as a steering board, we represent the interests of the member states and the associated countries in the EOS governance together with the other partners. And we address these policy issues. We ask our question, so what do we have to make more precise in our countries in order to advance open science in general? And another very important point is the information flow between EOS governance and ministries. Because if our ministries, and it's not only the research ministries, but also economy and medical, if they don't know about EOS and about the goals we have, they are not going to stand behind it, and they are not going to finance this. So we have to make sure that there's information flow between the tripartite, which is represented here, and the ministries in the different countries. We want to exchange best practices. This means we have to learn from each other. There's so much going on in different countries. It's very difficult for a single ministry to know what the options are. And very often there are very good ideas how to promote open science. It's not always connected to money. It's very often cultural change. It's not about money. It's about learning what is possible. And of course, we want to interconnect with other relevant initiatives. We have heard about EIRG and ESFRI and so on at the European level, that we move together all as one. So we don't meet very often 6 times per year, but we progress with the work in subgroups. This is how we work then on certain topics. So what we do is we ask ourselves, what kind of policies do we have to put into place? What kind of practices? And practices means here you have a policy, that's a nice thing, but you also want to have a financing with this. This is what we, in principle, at the ministry level mean with practices. How do we make things happen? And then, of course, we want to see impact at the end. So that's part of why we do all this monitoring also, because we want to know, is this well invested money, what we are giving out there? So what are the achievements on the steering board level on policies? So we ask our question, which areas need most urgently our attention, and where can policies help to advance? Because a policy, of course, also is only useful if it then also leads to actions. So just a statement without actions afterwards is a dangerous thing, because you lose a bit the attention also of the researchers and of the deciders. So this year we had focused on 3 policy issues: EOSC and data literacy, EOSC and the commercial partners, and EOSC sovereignty on fair data. I just give you on these a few keywords, so I don't have the time to discuss them at length. You will see the opinion papers, we call them, in the report of this event. They will be officially published early next year, because in the context of the report of our expert group. But you can ask also your steering board member to give you a copy of the status we have right now. There will be still some changes, perhaps in a word or two, but the context will be the same. So you can already take this and see in which direction we are thinking. So each of these opinion papers has a background, objectives, and recommendations. For example, this first one: skills and competences needed for digital transition and EOSC. So that's kind of clear. We have this problem, data curators and so on. We need specialists, we need competence. We have to not only educate new generations of this type of colleagues, but we also have to train the colleagues who are already in the field. So what is the objective? Open data skills for researchers at all career stages, sustainable support for researchers, mutual learning, and awareness for fair data and data literacy. So we have several recommendations, and again here we think of European, national, and institutional level, and here are just very few keywords I take from the opinion paper. We want a European framework for fair data skills and a European network of data competence centers, because coordination is key. We have to move together. It's very bad for careers, for example, if you have different approaches in different countries. You can then not change between countries. So we have to have a common approach there. We have to have this mutual learning. We have to see what works in the different countries. And we have to recognize data skills in career assessment. And this you have heard today already several times. And learning programs, of course. So second one is EOSC and commercial partners. I know in the research communities there's a lot of uncertainty. What will this mean if we engage commercial partners in the EOSC in a bit more significant way than we do today? So we see this as opportunities, but also as a certain risk. And we have to control this risk and to foster these opportunities by putting a policy frame around that. So from the objectives, so we have to have a concept for effective collaboration between all sources of competence that share the vision of an open science and innovation system. So it's very clear here, we want everybody to participate if they subscribe to open science practices. So there's no special rule for commercial partners. Recommendations we have. So we want to make an analysis. What are the risks and the benefits? We want to review the rules of participation. Of course, we are going to base this also on the work of the task force of the EOSC Association. And we want to explore synergies, for example, with Gaia-X and with the data spaces. And we want to coordinate investment at national level, because that's also an issue very often, that research invests in certain types of activities, and economy ministry invests in other parts, and there especially with the commercial partners. And if we can work there closer together on the national level, I think this would benefit both sides. And of course we want to discuss all this in national tripartite events, and we will hear about this later from Ute, I'm pretty sure. Third paper is on data sovereignty. So fair data are common goods. This is again this message. We want to provide data, and everybody who wants to provide data is welcome, but they have to be fair, and they have to be open, and they have to be accessible for all of us. And we have a responsibility to protect fair data value of use and reuse, so that's this quality aspect we have there. So the objective here is sovereignty on research fair data as common practice. EOSC tripartite, research communities, developers, and operators of the EOSC. And we have certain recommendations, so to evolve the rules of participation with quality standards, to look at EOSC interoperability framework development, and to provide guidelines here. So we have to clearly identify who are the contributors to the data we are handling in EOSC, and we have to have national EOSC-ready notes and policies, and to underline the quality assurance aspect. So these were the 3 opinion papers on policy issues, and then we have also ambitions in terms of monitoring open science. You heard about that. So we want to deploy open science principles, share best practices, and monitor evolution. And we would like to have, in the near future, a one-stop shop for open science monitoring, so that it's easy to identify gaps. So what is missing in different countries? In terms of policies, in terms, perhaps even in terms of financial support. Make the information as open as possible so that we can learn from each other. So the recommendations there are that we want to aim at large participation in open science at national and institutional level, and we have a number of quite ambitious targets we want to reach by 24 already, to the question Anna raised, what is your goal by 25? So we have a number of targets for 24 in terms of open access to publication, in terms of fair data repositories, and so on. And we want the EOSC steering board to discuss, communicate, validate, develop, and refine the policies which lead to open science. So this is now, unfortunately, a bit too small for me, but the EOSC steering board statement is kind of the summary of all these points, and you can read this then later. The slides are going to be public. So it's about that EOSC is a transverse data space, and that we have to work together with the other data spaces you heard about already. That we know that EOSC is part of the digital transition, and that we have to have the skills and the people involved there, and that EOSC is accelerating this, and that it has to be recognized. That we reaffirm the importance of the sovereignty of the research sector as fair data provider in EOSC, and we invite to open EOSC to the public sector at large, but also to the commercial partners. And we call all research and innovation stakeholders to commit to making open science the new normal. And finally, to commit to support the progress towards open science and the advancement of EOSC implementation by facilitating monitoring. So this point we had already. So practice-oriented achievements, you heard about the monitoring already. So for the national level, for the steering board, what do we monitor? Mainly policies and financing, because this is what it comes down to. So the motivation there is sharing of best practices, demonstrate the commitment. That's also very important for you as research organizations, that the countries are committed to EOSC, and to monitor evolution, not the state we have right now. We are mostly interested in how good and how fast do we move forward. And we want to motivate ourselves to do better and more for EOSC. So this, I think I can skip. So you are going to see the results of the first survey we launched in 21 and we filled out this year, and you will hear more about this in the next session. And this EOSC Observatory, which is an interactive tool, you will see then tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. There's a session where you can also see then the latest map. I noticed that, or I was pointed out that this map is not the last up to date, so Netherlands is still gray there. It should be colored in blue. Greece as well, I think. So policy-oriented planes.
I just hope.
Yeah. Greece is blue. Greece is not gray. So what are our plans in terms of policies? So we have these 4 policy papers. Now we have to work in our countries to make this happen, and we have to put this into our national policies, and we have to work on the action plans. We have to push for the rapid development of open science. We want to tackle additional policy issues we discussed yesterday, and we soon are going to have a short list of what we are going to work on there. And we want to, of course, work closely with the partners in order to make things happen. And for the steering board survey, for the monitoring, we want to now open this to all aspects of open science. And we have, in this policy paper connected to that. We have these ambitious goals, which you're going to see. And of course, we want to work towards one system, which is then more driven by pulling data or gathering data rather than asking single colleagues to fill out forms. So we really want to have an intelligent tool to make this happen, because otherwise it might be a bit difficult to get the support by the steering board members. Other practice-oriented plans, making EOSC happen. So we want to have this catalog of use cases we talked already about, include impact indicators in open science monitoring, continue working with the association on organizing the national tripartite events, and push for rapid development of open science practices in our countries. So you're going to see the national commitment session tomorrow afternoon, and there you get some examples from some countries, what they do in practice to support EOSC in their countries. So what's the future? Increased reproducibility of science results, increased trust in science, increased effectiveness, because all this under this, what I said before in the discussion, we as steering board members, we are very much interested that the research and innovation results are taken up by the society at large. We invest there, we want that it's usable by everybody, researchers and society at large. Investment into the web of fair research data and services is vital and going to continue inside and outside the EOSC. And one point I would like to stress is that the main investment into EOSC is always at the national level, and especially from the research performing and research funding organizations in terms of in-kind contribution. The Commission's work is very important, but it's supporting the development. The long-term sustainability, I think, relies mainly on the shoulders of the national financing and on the research performing organizations. So financing at national level, long-term positions, human resources from the research performing organizations. So I hope I convince you that we as member states and associated countries are highly committed to open science and to the EOSC, and EOSC is here to stay. There's no turning back. So as I said, if you label things a bit different in the future, it's going to be there. And I know some colleagues here who don't believe this, but we as countries, we want fair, open data. And we want this sharing of services, and we want the sharing of e-infrastructures. And we are going to push you to do that in the context of EOSC and outside the context of EOSC. So, and I think that's what I had to say, more or less. Yes.
Thank you very much. You realize it's not by coincidence that Volker is the co-chair of the steering board, and it's not by coincidence that he's in this panel, because he's really passionate about EOSC. And he told you, he tells very clear, it will stay. Don't dream that it will not stay, because we all want open and fair data. So thank you very much. Before we move to the next presentation, I would like to ask one question from my side. Maybe you look at the questions at the slide, I will have a look, and anybody else would like to have a question, that will be fine as well. So, what it was the most challenging thing for you as a co-chair of EOSC, apart from co-chairing with me?
Well, the most challenging is that we have this large number of countries, now 40 plus countries. Each country is very specific, that's kind of evident. And each country starts from a different point. And we have to make sure that it's not about from which point we start, but to advance. And to convince colleagues, this is very important what you do in your country, and don't compare yourself necessarily to whatever other country, but make sure that you work forward. And it's very difficult, I think, to keep this momentum, this message in the steering board, because we have our way of working, and we have the 6 meetings per year where it has to also go quite fast. We don't have so much time. And really to listen to all the partners there. And this, I think, is a challenge, and we still have to work. I think we have to do more to be more inclusive there with all countries to advance.
And the challenge was that all this happened in the period of COVID as well. We should not forget that maybe, I mean, this is the first, one of the few physical meetings we had with a big community as well. Huh? And I have one question that I think that will be good if you will be able, the second one. What about synergy between open science requirements in Horizon Europe and national calls for research projects funded from the EU structural funds? Very nice, huh? And then including excellence criteria.
So I'm not an expert on structural funds, but of course, as soon as you have a policy in your country to move open science forward, you will want to align your national funding or EU structural funding with that. So this is also why I always say these policies have an importance, they have an impact, because they give us the rules, what we want to finance, and especially what we don't want to finance. So if this is really a question per each country, how they implement that. But I think through the work of the steering board, we make sure that at least we know of that and we align there.
Great, thank you very much. Anybody else who would like to ask a question to Volker before moving to the next? Any? Yes, please.
Niklas Blomberg, Director of Elixir. So Volker, I thought it was really interesting the point you made on monitoring and understanding the budget commitments also from the national actors. And I think this is a very similar challenge that we have for research infrastructures, and in particular distributed research infrastructures, because the investment comes from many actors across Europe, and understanding understanding the total volume of that, it can be very difficult. I think it's an interesting link between EOSC and possibly S3 in having a consistent methodology for understanding this.
Yeah, the methodology, that's why we didn't disclose in this, or will not disclose in this first survey per country numbers, because we figured out that everybody had a bit of a different way of estimating that. So we hope to advance there and to have a more consistent number also per country in the next survey. It's true that there will be some double counting, right? Because what you invest in S3 is part of EOSC and vice versa. So we have to accept that. But it can give you a ballpark number, an idea how much is invested in open science and how much is invested in EOSC. And I think we have to work very closely there with S3, because of course there we know exactly how much cash we give per country, that you can look up on the web, but also the in-kind contributions, that's then of course always very difficult to estimate, and the association has the same problem to estimate how many FTEs go into the EOSC.
In-kind contributions is always a difficult thing to define first and then to estimate.
Yeah, but getting financial contributions is not easy.
Nicholas, just one moment. If I can take the opportunity, I mean, would you like to share your experience with the COVID period and the COVID work that you have done?
Thank you, Anna. Yes, I have a short talk about this in the MVE session later today, so I'll be very brief. But I think what we, in terms of EOSC, I think what we really benefited from is the investment in the cluster projects like EOSC for Life, or EOSC Life in our case, where we managed to put together a number of services, open science services, and we could then very rapidly leverage those to bring out the open data in the COVID-19 data portal. But the foundation are really the sort of community services that we managed to bring together through EOSC. Sorry, my voice is a bit funny today, but thank you, Anna.
So you believe on EOSC?
Yes, I believe on EOSC. I coordinate 3 EOSC projects, I could say nothing else.
So who else would take the floor? There are 3, 4 questions. Yes. I think you were first, and then we give the microphone. Yes.
Hey, thanks for your very motivating talk. I have a question. So in the US, we see something that we call data gravity, where data is moving into commercial clouds. And in theory, they are, of course, accessible, but only for very privileged users and users that can pay. How do we avoid that in the European Union, and what is your take on that? And especially the connection with Gaia X that you mentioned. Can we also talk about that also in the next years and make sure that this doesn't happen in the EU?
So that was a bit the driving point behind our policy paper, working with the commercial partners, because there's indeed this fear, this risk So in Europe, we have an agenda very much on sovereignty, not only in the digital sector, also in other sectors, but this is a main line of our policies, and where we want to make sure that we stay ahead of the game. So, of course, there is always a risk, because the financial possibilities in the private sector are quite large if there's an interest. But we can put something against that by saying we want our research communities to work in a certain way, being fair and open, and we support that, and we have to make sure that we provide the tools, and EOSC is one of the tools in order to do that, so that you don't have to use Google Doc, and you don't have to put your data into whatever repository is offered. So, but it's a challenge, but I think every partner is aware, and we have to try to get the support in order to make this happen. There's no guarantee. I would agree with that.
Okay. Another last question, because then we have really to move to the last presentation.
Okay, testing. Okay, so I also posted this question to Slido, but it's not appeared. First time I hear that EOSC is targeting sovereignty of the data. So this slightly makes me asking, what does it mean, and what technical impact will have principle of sovereignty to the well-developed FAIR principle, which we well understand from technical point of view and policy.
Let's first talk about the general point of view. The main message here is, you as research organization, you are in charge. Which data you want to publish. You should be also in charge in, if there is a quality issue with your data in the EOSC, that you can pull them back, that you can update them, so that you are sovereign in that sense. Then from the technical point, there we have to discuss how we do things, but it's mainly a message, I think, for us as a research community. We stay in the driving seat. We define the quality standards. We define what is going to be out there.
Okay, I just want to make I know quite well what does mean sovereignty of data in International Data Spaces Association, that started using this term. They also not at a stage of publishing how to publish, in which form, but also on defining the usage policy. That's why I'm saying that if we fully adopt sovereignty principle, we'd bring kind of technical question how we track the usage of data and what is legal, whatever. Because technically, tracking usage of data is very difficult.
I fully agree, but I invite you to have a look at this paper on sovereignty we produced, where we also address these points. But I agree that tracking what happens with the data afterwards is very difficult.
So I suggest that we stop at this point. There is one question in the Slido where you could find the opinion papers. The opinion papers have been finalized yesterday. One of it is the sovereignty. And we will publish it at the Commission site, where we have all the information about EOSC. But I assume and I hope that we can share it with all member states, which will have the opportunity to publish them at any national websites that they have in relation to EOSC as well.
Yeah, the member states have them already.
Okay, great. With these words, I would like, last but not least, to pass the floor to Karel and to Ute for the last presentation. And you need to have question and answers. So
I have to?
we need to have question and answers to you as well. So don't use all the remaining time for the presentation. Voilà.
Well, I've been asked to talk about the achievements of the association and the plans for 23. And I will talk about the achievements in the framework of the partnership and in the association itself and the plans for 2023. We've been working on monitoring, and reporting. And the AAP, Additional Activities Plan of 2021, has been established and approved, that of 2022 as well in the Partnership Board, and the 2023 AAP, Additional Activities Plan, has been submitted to the Commission and is under discussion at the moment. Then we have established a monitoring framework, as it's called, in order to monitor the KPIs with the Commission. That's in place and agreed, and we are now setting the baseline for those KPIs in the first survey, which has been running very recently. So the association is getting at steam, and we have to report our full biannual report next year. Then, in the frame of Horizon Europe, we have been working on the multi-annual roadmap 2023-2024, which is now integrated in the SHRIA, and therefore it has the version number 1.1. We've been working on planning the MAR 2025, but learned that we are going to work on a MAR 2025, 2026, 2027 only this week, so we have to modify our slides here. Then we have reacted to the prior information knowledge about the procurement, and we have launched EOSC Focus. The process we are doing with respect to the MAR is we have an MOU with the Commission as an association. Based on a community consultation, we produce a draft multi-annual roadmap. This is going to the Commission that discusses this with the Member States in the comitology process, and that leads to a Horizon Europe program. This Horizon Europe program finances projects, as you all know, and for the total period of around 490 million euros. And we interact with these projects as a federation, and we try to do that in a structured way. Therefore, we have made a vademecum, and this vademecum structures the way we interact with the Horizon Europe projects, as you may see later on by Ute. We look at the draft program, which is available at some places, and compare this with the input we gave. We can be very pleased, because the red dots show what was in our MAR, and they are in all the lines that you find in the program for 2023, and they are in all the lines you find in the program for 2024. So overall, the Commission is working in real interaction with the association in order to get to the new program. Of course, the devil is in the detail, in a sense that the projects still have to be financed, still have to be running, and then the ultimate content of the projects is not determined by us, of course. After the match, there's always a new match. So after the MAR 2023, we are looking forward to the MAR 2025-2027, I call it now. With respect to the procurement, we made clear that we want to be in an advisory role for the procurement. We are not the one that is having the relevant experience as an association to be running such a procurement. Some people have suggested that. The Commission has never suggested that. The Commission is running the procurement through DG Connect in Europe, and we have said we will not apply for a tender because we will never be in competition with our partners, but it's also not our role to fill in this procurement. But still we think the association should have a clear advisory role with respect to procuring the EOSC platform. We have started EOSC Focus, one of the new Horizon Europe 2021 projects it's a CSA project, Coordination Support Action project, in order to support the partnership. And this project is really helping us as of the middle of this year to support the partnership further. We have organized quite a number of tripartite events together with the countries and together with the steering board, as you've heard, in 16 countries overall, these tripartite events, or no, I should say not in 16 countries, 16 countries contributed to these tripartite events, and the last one is still upcoming in Germany, and of course there is a prenatal one in France, Volker. This has been a tour through Europe, for some of us a physical tour through Europe in order to visit these places and to interact with the people, but I think a very successful tour through Europe. We invented this sort of in the beginning of last year. It started in April, I think, or May in Austria, and has been spreading over Europe. There's been many countries that are interested. And if we look at the overall result, we have reached 1,195, let's say 1,200 individuals with this, mainly stakeholders, but all the countries had their governance on board, all the countries had their financing people on board, and always there is the mandated organizations and the steering board members. We have had some 150 presenters in 16 countries, as I said. This is the association during our last General Assembly in Brussels, and in the General Assembly we have had a charter for the mandated organizations, we have had a revision of the Articles of Association, and we have had a presentation of the new logo, of which we will hear more in a minute. Then in the next Association General Assembly in this month, we will have elections for the presidency and for 2 of the directors. We will launch the bylaws and financing committees working on the discussion on the bylaws and on the membership fees, and we will establish hopefully a new group called a working group with ESFRI. And if you look at the ESFRIs that are a member of the association or an observer, we have 17, they're all part of ESFRI. So all these research infrastructures within ESFRI are let's say, actively contributing to the association, and therefore we decided to form a special working group in order to have a better interaction with those research infrastructures. I think the main thing and the main source we have is our task forces. 13 task forces. We have just set up a new supporting team for that. They have a quality review process which we have created in the last couple of months, and they have been, let's say, leading to major deliverables that are coming out in the very near future, and few of them have come out already. Then there is the EOSC task force that is working for the symposium. These are the task force support officers, 6 new people on the block with the association. And in the symposium here, and I will not go in detail here, but there are many contributions coming from these task forces. Some of them are closed events where the task forces meet themselves. Some of them are open events where the task forces invite everybody to join the discussion they are having. And some of them are showing off the different things the task forces are doing. We had a strategy workshop, and we are still continuing to work on our strategy and defining what we consider the strategy. This is the current status of thinking. We have articulated what the board of the association, on behalf of the association, thinks what EOSC is, and we keep on saying it is a web of fair data and services on these data for research. Why do we do this? Well, in order, of course, to unlock the full potential. And how do we do this? You can find further in these slides, and I will not elaborate on that now. But there's many steps we can take as well with respect to assessing the interoperability, as with respect to the sustainability, and last but not least, with respect to the people that do this. This is the source of our work. It started with Ute a year ago, and we have now about 10 people in the association employed, and I think this is the main achievement, to be honest. If I look back, the fact that we have been able to, let's say, get this working force here and ready and working for you is the main achievement of what the association has been doing. We have created a community platform called EOSC Forum, which is just being filled in. It has been started a couple of months ago for the task forces, for the interaction with the outside world, for the groupings within the association. Still has a lot of momentum to gain, but I think it becomes an important way to interact in this complex network of, let's say, many players in the whole system. Then our work plan. What are we going to do in 2023 in order to deliver in 2025? We start by delivering in 2024. About the partnership, we continue, of course, to monitor. We are working, as I said, on the multi-annual roadmaps. We are facilitating the partnership board meetings. That is also a task of the association. We are contributing to the discussion of the future. Michael mentioned it already. We have started this discussion, had some of the continuation yesterday. yesterday, and we are continuing to work with the national levels. We think these national tripartite events are a very successful way of reaching stakeholders in all these countries, reaching financing organizations in all these countries, and reaching, above all, the ministries in all these countries. Then EOS Focus will see to it that the coordination of the different projects will be strengthened. We have the vademecum for that, and we will update that. This is a first draft of it, of course, and we will continue to deliver added value for and with EOS Focus. Then the association itself. The support of the task forces, I just mentioned that we have 6 new individuals, 2.5 full-time equivalent, to support the task forces on their path to delivery. We will have a working group, most likely, assuming the General Assembly will agree, next year, to work with us and the interaction with the research infrastructures. The team will work on the new, there's 2 teams, one on bylaws and one on financing, as I mentioned. The General Assemblies will be there, of course, and the formal board meetings. We basically have every week an informal board meeting, which we wrap up in a formal board meeting every 2 months. So it's a very, let's say, active community. Then there is a proactive engagement with the membership. We want to engage with our members more and more often. We would like to visit them if possible, but that is going to be a hell of a task. We will broadcast the voice of the community more loudly and more clearly with respect to what has been achieved, and we will direct the EOSC narrative we are developing more clearly to the world, consolidating the EOSC brand and relaunching EOSC website. Ute, rest is for you.
So, and I try to be brief and move with a story from how did we come from Horizon 2020 to Horizon Europe. And first of all, I would like to thank everybody who was still active in our Horizon 2020 project at the beginning of this year, because we invited them to fill in a survey, yet another survey, to find out what are your key exploitable results that you want to be taken up and sustained going forward. And in total, I think 22 projects submitted their contributions in spring, and we have turned this now, and that's how I can save many, many slides, is we have turned this into a brochure. And we didn't do it alone. It was my colleague Ilaria leading on that with the support of RDA, with Ari, and also with Trust IT, who helped us under the EOSC Future project to produce this brochure. This brochure is available outside. Don't miss to take it home. These are the results of Horizon 2020 of EOSC-related projects. And the good thing is, it fits into this bag you also find in front of the door. And then you can take it home, even more than 1 copy. So that's Horizon 2020. And I skipped the slides. This was also Horizon 2020. Lot of different logos, and it was difficult to tell what exactly is EOSC actually, because there was not a very good communication in terms of branding. And I think we should have worked on that, and we did so because we thought maybe a family brand would be more impactful, where you clearly know what is the core of the brand, and then you can associate around it to be clearly identifiable. For that, we launched a year ago a logo competition to find a new logo. And many, many young design students, because that competition was targeted to young design students. And we had a final round after we had, let's say, an expert group that decided this shortlist. We had those 3 final logos out for community voting. And you chose. And there was a clear winner, and I'm now very happy and delighted that we have the winner here. So that's Joe Parker-Rees, who is the creator of this logo. And Joe, quickly come upstairs that we can introduce you. There's also a way here. So, Joe, who are you? And
hello, I'm Joe. I made this logo. Thank you so much, everyone, for inviting me over here. I'm honoured that I was voted as a winner for the logo, and it's so nice to see my logo, like something I've worked so hard on.
You know? I mean,
tangible results, to see it in the lanyards and the tote bags everywhere. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm having a great time in Prague, and
that was part of the prize. So there was a prize money for the logo, but also then the trip to Prague. Yeah.
May I ask you, Joe, have you participated to the European Science Days in Leeds this year?
Sorry?
The European Science Days in Leeds. This year, Leeds was the European...
Joe moved early enough to London.
I haven't been in Leeds since university.
Okay.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah, this year was, yes. It is.
So, thanks, Joe.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot. So a big job this year has been the kickoff of the 2021 Infra-EOSC projects. And one of the key activities for next year, and that's part of our work plan, is to establish a collaboration among the projects, or to help facilitate the collaboration among the projects, and not only the 2021 projects, but also neighboring projects, and also those which are in the pipeline now. And that's the caveat I have to make. The 2022 projects, they are still in the grant preparation phase. The contracts are not yet signed. However, I think we should not miss the opportunity now to introduce all the projects to you. And for that, and Sarah, I need your help with the microphone, please, that you pass it to Ignacio. We have prepared a little, let's say, stand-up performance. So the idea is that each of the projects briefly stands up. It is normally the project coordinator, but unfortunately Alvaro cannot be here today, so Ignacio is standing in for him, presenting AI for EOSC. And we do that in less than 30 seconds per project, because we want to enable interaction with the audience. Ignacio.
So thank you so much. I'm Ignacio Blanquer, one of the partners of AI for EOSC. So it's a project that delivers an enhanced set of advanced services for the development of artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning models, and application in the European Open Science Cloud with innovative approaches. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So AI for EOSC, and I mean the idea of this introduction now is that you reach out to those people, that we do draw the connections between the Horizon 2021-22 projects and those who are either still running, or the task forces and whoever else is here in the round, in the group, what do we say, in the room. Björn, you are the next one.
Hey, so we have the project Euroscience Gateway, and it will deliver in 3 years. So we will have 100,000 users on our Science Gateway, which is, you can use this gateway with an API, but also with a graphical user interface, and it brings together all different kinds of science communities: life science, climate science, earth science maybe. Yeah, and you can run whatever tools, workflows in a reproducible manner on a distributed compute and storage infrastructure in Europe.
Thank you very much, Björn. We have one sentence just to point out to the time constraints. That's why we put it here. Alessandro, fair ease.
Hi, my name is Alessandro. I'm working for the French CNRS on the French National Research Infrastructure called DataTerra for the Earth system, and I'm the coordinator of EOSC Ferries. The overall objective of Ferries project is to customize and operate integrated services for observation and modeling Earth system, environment, and biodiversity in close cooperation with scientific and user communities, and with in close cooperation also with research infrastructure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And then the next FAIR project is FAIR Impact. Ingrid.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ingrid Dillo. We work in the FAIR Impact project to support the implementation of FAIR enabling practices in Europe, and we try to do that not only on the European level, but specifically also on a national and a local level, and we heard the importance of those levels for the EOSC earlier on today. We will also try to bring solutions from one domain to another domain, and we will not only focus on data, but also on other research outputs like software and semantic artifacts. And we will do a lot to make it possible to interact with everybody. So we will have open calls for ambassadors for our projects, but also open calls to provide support, both financially as well as expert support in kind, to help you also on the national and local level to implement FAIR enabling practices. Thank you.
Thank you. So, and the last FAIR project in this row is FAIR Core for EOSC.
Hello, I'm Tommi Suominen for FAIR Core for EOSC. So FAIR Core for EOSC is a research and innovation action that focuses on concrete service development to further the realization of the minimum viable EOSC and the Web of FAIR data. Based on the gaps identified in this area, we focus on the topics of persistent identifiers, metadata and ontologies, interoperability, research software. And together with leveraging existing technologies and services, FairCore for EOSC develops 9 new EOSC core components to address these shortcomings identified in the SRIA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tommy. So the next one is the project RAISE, and the RAISE project coordinator could not yet be here. He will only arrive later, and Fotis stands in for him. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ute. So I'm standing in for Evdokimos Konstantinidis, who is the coordinator from the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. So RAISE is about a data processing system moving the processing to data instead of moving, as usual, the data to the processing. So this is the innovative part. It's a research innovation action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we move across the aisle to Skills for EOSC.
Thank you, Ute. So I'm Emma Lazzari, I work for GAR, which is the Italian association managing the network of research in our country, and I'm the coordinator of Skills for EOSC that aims, as you can see, at empowering Europe with an European, with an EOSC-ready digitally workforce. I would like to thank Volker because before he mentioned the importance of skills and of competence centers that we aim at coordinating and creating in those countries that have not for the moment. So please meet me later in the coffee breaks.
Thank you very much. So that everyone still has an opportunity to introduce themselves, we try to be brief. So Niklas has 2 hats. So the first one is for EOSC for Cancer now.
Yeah, so EOSC for Cancer is coordinated by the Barcelona Supercomputing Center together with us, and we're trying to connect data from research infrastructures and comprehensive cancer care centers, make that openly available for analysis platforms to support researchers, but also the cancer mission.
And then, we already talked about that, by COVID, a neighboring project, so to speak.
Yeah, and this was done before the logo came out, so my apologies for not being totally on brand.
Yes.
This is making data from infectious diseases openly available to researchers and other interested parties across Europe, across disciplines, and actually our biggest, one of our first successes is a deep and meaningful integration of the social science archives in the COVID-19 data portal, happened last week.
Very good. So then, briefly, the EIRG SB7 project, Jan.
Yeah, EIG has been mentioned a few times in these presentations here today. I represent the support project. It's the seventh iteration of the support project, so it's EIG SB7. And we support the EIG in facilitating their vision of an integrated landscape of European infrastructures.
Very good. So, with that, we move on to World Fair. Simon.
Simon Hodgson, Executive Director of CoData. World Fair is a genuinely global project. 11 case studies from research, from domain and cross-domain research areas from around the world. Each research area we're focusing on interoperability and reusability. Each case study will have implementations and recommendations. And then there's a coordinating work package. We'll look at FAIR implementation profiles, recommendations for more domain-sensitive FAIR assessment, and above all, a cross-domain interoperability framework.
Very good. And now we come to the 2022 projects, and the caveat, they have not been contracted yet, but we want to read out this one sentence. Henning.
Yeah, my name is Henning Sten Hansen. I'm professor at Aalborg University Copenhagen, and I am coordinator of the Aqua Infra project. It's still under contract, as mentioned, but we hope to start 1st of January. And our aim is to develop an EOSC-compliant virtual research environment to support the restoration of healthy oceans, seas, coastal, and inland waters.
Very good. Thank you very much. Then, Blue Cloud 2026. Sarah.
Hello, thanks, Ute. Good morning, everybody. I'm Sarah Pittonet, Trust IT, and I'm the coordinator of the Blue Cloud project and of the upcoming Blue Cloud 2026, which is building on the successful results of Blue Cloud to build a federated European fair and open research ecosystem for ocean, seas, coastals, and inland water. We will develop a thematic marine extension of EOSC for open web-based science, evolving the Blue Cloud pilot ecosystem into a federated European one for fair data and analytical services. We are having a session on Thursday at 11 for those who want to join us.
Very good. So, quickly, Graft OA, and I think Margot has just arrived on time.
If we think about sovereignty of data, we also need to think about sovereignty of our publishing infrastructures. And CraftOA stands for creating a federated technology for open access publishing, and will be making publishing, institutional publishing and Diamond Open Access part of the EOSC. And it's my pleasure, and we're part of OPERAS.
Thank you very much. And then I think SciLake will be presented by Paolo, right?
Hello, yes, I'm representing SciLake on behalf of Thanasis Vergoulis from Athena Research Innovation Center. So SciLake is about scientific knowledge graphs, which are today the mean to track, monitor, assess, discover metadata about the research publishing, going beyond the publication for communities and countries. And this project spins around this concept. So we are building the tools to federate these graphs, to enable data exchange, and AI tools to enrich them in order to favor open science practices. For that, we'll build on the OpenAir Research Graph. We'll extend it to serve 4 communities, 4 use cases, from the neuroscience, the e-brain, transport, cancer, and energy. Thank you, Natalia.
This is what happens when you give the people the briefing of one sentence. Okay, GRASP OS.
Yes, GRASP OS. I'm Natalia, and I'm representing Yannis Ioannidis from Research Center, Athena Research Center. So GRASP OS is about responsible research assessment that includes open science. GRASP OS is about building the infrastructure in order to make sure that we have the right indicators and metrics to use, both for individuals, for organizations, for research communities. We will approach a very practical, we have a practical way, data, tools, frameworks, and we're working with pilots. So if you have questions, come and meet us in the coffee.
Very good. And then last but not least, RDA Tiger.
Yes, I'm Ariasmi. I'm the director of RDA Association in Europe, and RDA Tiger is a continuation of European RDA, but what we have for not only for the projects here, but anybody who is working in EOSC, that if you need to build things which need internationalization and standardization, RDA provides the working groups, and RDA Tiger provides support for those working groups. So as new things, we will provide kind of membership, search, and facilitation of working groups, and also help to finalize the results of the working groups.
Very good. And the very last project, and then I leave, is, so to speak, our own, coordinated by the EOSC Association. It's EOSC Focus, and we are here to help the partnership succeed. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much to everybody. And actually, that was the pleasure for me also to meet all the coordinators of Horizon Europe program, because I haven't had the opportunity up to now. There was a big coordination event organized in Brussels by the Commission services with all the signed projects, not the not yet signed projects, that they will come very soon. But unfortunately, I was not able to participate. So it's a great thing also to use EOSC logo, but please don't forget Horizon Europe logo, because it is part of your obligation. This is Horizon Europe money that they will spend. And of course, what is very important out of this presentation is that this project, they are not working in isolation. It's a portfolio of projects that they are derived from the work program of Horizon Europe that was prepared on the basis of the strategic, of the SRIA, the strategic agenda prepared by the association. And the beauty of that is that reflects the different components of what EOSC needs in order to be operational, plus the platform, which was not presented, of course, because it will come through the procurement that we are going to have very soon. So I don't think we have time for question and answers because we are just punctual. But I would like to take the opportunity to thank all of you for these excellent presentations, for the inclusive presentation, in particular the last one. The logo is really very nice. Actually, I think when I saw the 3 of them, it was immediately in my mind that was the best. So please don't forget to take your bags and your brochure. I would like also to take the opportunity just of one thing, because I see one question in the Slido, which is about what we can do more for missions. And Giorgio, you spoke about missions. There are a couple of projects and a couple of initiatives that they are linked to missions. It's the Cancer Mission and the Ocean Mission is the other one, or and the Climate Adaptation Mission. And we can do more We can do more. And then I was thinking, looking a little bit in the tweet today, and there are a lot of tweets about this symposium, but I mean, we will not going to be the big news. The big news today is COP27. And I was just reflecting while I was looking at that, what an initiative like EOSC could do, not just for the missions, but for the big issue of climate adaptation and about the big questions that our politicians across the world they are discussing today. And I think if we are even more challenged, we may think and we may consider that what we are doing in EOSC, it will be not just important for missions in Horizon Europe, but it will be important for the big challenges that we have in the world. So with these words, I would like to thank all of you. Please take the time during the break to have informal discussions, and let's meet up again in the afternoon. What time is then? No, we have another session.
There's no break.
Ah! I was very,
so don't
very
leave
much in
the
advance.
room.
I'm dreaming of a break.
There is another
Sorry.
session now.
There is another session. Good. Then there is another session, and I'm leaving from here. Thank you.